So this video, we're going to talk about workstations. Workstation, of course, is super important because it's where we're actually doing our work, our technicals and fundamental analysis. This video is mostly going to be comprised of setting up a TradingView workspace. I'm also going to give you a few tips as well, just a few things worth noting, more so for beginners and the lesser experienced traders. So workstation really consists of 90% technical, of course, as we've spoken about. Most of our work is going to be here on the charts, looking at the technical analysis. So, TradingView, this website, is going to be the bulk of it. This is where we're actually going to be doing a lot of our work. And then, of course, MetaTraders, etc., that we are going to be actually placing the trades on. Now, I spoke about those in chapter 1, so hopefully you've actually got those set up now. Before we dive into TradingView, before we start looking at the technicals and setting up your workspace in here, a few tips and pointers. So, a lot of new traders believe you need a multi-screen workplace, somewhere with a lot of different screens that you can view so that you can shift from currency pair to currency pair continually. View multiple charts at once. Now, I've found that this is not the case. You don't need this whatsoever. Now, I actually do all of my work right now off of a MacBook. I've had a few different MacBooks, currently using a 13-inch 2020 MacBook. That one is nice. I've had a 13-inch in the past as well, and a 15-inch as well. Now, I'm going to be going for a 15-inch MacBook next, just because it gives you a bit more screen room. You can get one of these for, depends on your spec, but if you're looking for a MacBook Pro, starting spec I think is around £1,200, and you're going to get a really good one for that. Forgive me if I'm wrong, you might be able to get them for around 1,000, but I think they are generally between 1,200 and about 2,500 for the top spec 15-inch one. So it's not too much of an investment. Now, it sounds like a lot, but the amount of money that you can make from that workspace is, of course, worth it. This is essentially the only kind of working tool we have, the only overhead we have is a good laptop to work off. Now, personal maybe, but I do not like Windows laptops. They feel clunky. They break easily. If you can bash them and they'll break. They're plasticky. They're not too versatile. They're a bit clunky to use as well. Now, MacBooks, Apple, it might be personal preference really, but I'm really a big fan of the Apple technology. So MacBook is all you really need. Now, if you want to get a desktop, yep, go for it. I like a laptop because we can use it on the go. When I'm on the go, I can actually take this with me, check the charts anywhere, even in the car, in a cafe. You can't do that with a desktop, of course. So for me, a laptop all the way. Now, my advice to you there is basically, consider investing into a good laptop. Yeah, you don't have to spend loads. Anything really will cut it, but just don't get one that's unpleasant to use because it's going to be something you're using very, very often. And I would kind of advise against that whole multi-screen desktop setup, unless, of course, you have that and a nice versatile laptop to take around with you, or if you just spend a lot of time at your PC. So that's just a little bit of advice. Now, what we're going to do now is dive into the TradingView, set up your workstation in here. I'll show you how you can actually get a few different chart layouts and color themes, etc., and show you through everything we're going to be using. So what we have here, Euro, Pound, Euro GBP, hourly chart. It's basically nice and clean layout where we have our charts, we have our currency pairs, we have our time frames. Everything is right here, ready to see. Now you can see we've got the price scales down the side. We have the date scale down the bottom. And then across the sides, we do have what might originally look to be a confusing amount of different tools, but I'm going to talk through them now. So when you crack open TradingView, your chart is essentially going to be a white chart with these red and green lines, a white surrounding border as well, like this one. Okay. And you're probably going to have some volume bars, so some green and red sticks that come off from the bottom of the chart. There will also be a grid on the chart. You can remove that, remove everything, make it nice and neat. So the first step when setting up a chart, delete those across the bottom, get the chart nice and clean. In terms of your color theme, what you can actually do is click on the little cog up here, or you can double click the actual candlesticks, and that's going to open up this chart setting tab. Now, what you can do with this chart setting tab is change the colors of the candlesticks. For example, if I wanted blue candles, I could do that. If I wanted these candles to be black, I could do that. So that is how we can actually go ahead and change the colors of our candles. What do I recommend doing? Choose a color theme you like, one that's nice and easy to work with. We can, of course, go with, just the simple green and red, which is what I'm using right now on the chart layout. That's my standard chart layout. I've got the dark color theme on as well, so that we can have that darker surrounding. Just separates it from the chart. It's a bit easier on the eyes, I believe. And yeah, what we'll also want to do is head over to appearance, and what you'll have when you start up is some grid lines, right? These grid lines you can remove, just make them the same color as your background. I think it's much cleaner without them. You don't need them whatsoever, to be honest. And I think that the chart is much cleaner without. So that is how I like to have my chart laid out. Nice, simple color scheme. No grids, no volume bars at the bottom, nothing like that. Simple candlesticks and price scale. Simple as that. So that's the first step to setting up your TradingView chart. Now, another thing to mention is when you have this color theme set, what you can actually do is right click the chart, and you're going to have this drop down. On this drop down, color theme is here. You've got these two defaults, light and dark. I'll click one so I can see what that's like. I believe this is how your chart is going to start up. You can, of course, edit it, as I've said. Now, borders I like to have black. They stand out more then. And the wicks as well, I like to have black. They stand out more, the candles do, and just think it looks a bit nicer. So that's that color theme. But what you can actually do is save your own color themes as well, okay? I've got these three marked. I have a dark color theme, a light color theme, and a neutral color theme. Now, I would recommend doing something like this. Nice and versatile. Allows you to get 3 different views on the market to suit your style whenever you fancy watching it. So I'll just run through them. Light is the one that we were just looking at. The green and red candles on the white background. Now, personally, of course, I do like that dark color theme. So this is where I usually trade. Now, if I'm trading on a night time, or I just fancy a switch up, or I'm finding this a bit tolling on my eyes, I will switch it up to my dark color theme, which is exactly the same, but with a black background and black scales. Now, this one is, generally something I'd use more so on a night time. Only difference here as well is the borders and wicks are actually gray rather than black, because of course, if they were black, I wouldn't be able to see them against the background. So that is my other color theme, light and dark. And then neutral is an interesting one. This is the black chart where all of the candles are black. So this is more so a psychology thing. Having all these black candles takes me away from focusing on bulls and bears, and instead I focus on the market structure. I use this one quite a lot. It's very, very useful to get a different view on the market, right? Rather than just focusing on bullish candles, bearish candles, because they can throw you off, right? For example, if we see the market is moving up here, and then we see, green, 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 right? Let me show you the different color theme. Here, for example, green candle, green candle, green candle, green candle. And then when we see this red candle, okay, as silly as it seems, this can actually throw your psychology off and make you think, right, the market's going to reverse here. When we're actually using these neutral color themes, where everything is black, you have that effect less, right? You're just focusing on the market structure. It's just a simple thing. It comes down to psychology. Red is, a bit of a panic color, and green is like a safety color, right? That's just a mental thing that is seen by many people. So when you see the green candles and you're brought into a position, everything's good. But as soon as you see a red candle, that can throw you off. Now, that's why I actually like the neutral color theme. It removes that psychological aspect, and it allows you to focus on the overall structure of the market. So those are the 3 color themes I have, and I would recommend making something like that: dark, light, and neutral. Now, you can work on your standard light chart or your standard dark chart, whichever one you prefer. But then you have, of course, the other one there for whenever you might want to use it. And for that new perspective, that fresh perspective, you have the neutral chart as well. So that's your color themes. That's the first step really of setting up your charts. Now, what you're also going to have is the time frames, okay? These are across the top, and of course, different time frames show different price. So for example, when we are looking at this chart, the D chart, this is the daily chart. Now, what this actually shows is each individual candle shows 1 day of price action. If we drop it to the 4-hour chart, now each individual candlestick shows 4 hours of price action. On the 1-hour chart, every candle is 1 hour of price action, and so on. So you'll see we have essentially the same picture. Let me just show you, box this area off. So this bit of price action on the 1-hour chart is more refined on the 4-hour chart. We see the same thing, but split into less candles. So there's less noise. If we look on the daily chart, we'll see then that boxed area is now simply just 1, 2, 3, 4 days of price action. So timeframes are very, very important. We are going to be using multiple timeframes in our trading. So it's important that you actually get these timeframes prepped and ready to go for your trading. So how do we do that then? We are going to have a number of timeframes already here, okay? 1 minute, 5 minute, 15, 30, 1 hour, and so on. What we can actually do is add different timeframes. For example, if I wanted a 33-minute timeframe, which I don't, we could add that in. And then if we click the 33-minute timeframe, it's going to show us price within that timeframe. So each candle is now 33 minutes of price action, okay? That's not something that I want, to be honest. What I actually use, though, something worth mentioning, is I do use a few different timeframes to the usual. So what I actually have is the 10-minute time frame, which I personally use over the 15-minute time frame. This one needs to be added in separately, the 20-minute and the 40-minute as well. So I like to look at it in 10-minute intervals and 20-minute intervals, rather than the 15s, the 30s, the 45s. 10, 20, 40, 60, which is going to be the 1 hour, are all the different types of timeframes that I like to use. So, I mean, you can work on your own timeframes. You can use the default ones, or you can actually go ahead and add these different ones that I use in, which I personally would recommend doing. So that's where all your timeframes are going to be. We've got minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and you're going to want to favorite some as well. Favoriting them, which is this little star icon, you can just click it on any of them, is going to make it pop up here. So I have, of course, the 1, 3, 5, 10, 1 hour, 4 hour, daily, and weekly. 1, 3, 5, 10, 1 hour, 4 hour, daily, and weekly, all marked on, and the monthly. So they're all right there for me to actually look at whenever I need to, which is, of course, very useful. And I would recommend actually just going in and favoriting the timeframes you'll be using. I'd favorite these ones: monthly, weekly, daily, 4 hour, 1 hour, and 10-minute. Now, these ones are quite scaled in. You might not want to scale down that much, but you can do. So, you might want to add those as well. But those ones from month through to 10-minute, I would favorite all of those so that they are there ready to press whenever you need them. So that's your color themes and your time frames down. Now, the currency pair, the different assets that we trade, can be found right here. For example, if we type in GBP USD, of course, looking at the pound versus the US dollar, that is going to pop up on the chart then, pound versus the US dollar. If we wanted to look at euro versus the Canadian dollar, we could do that here, and there it is. It would show up there, okay? But what we can actually do, so that we don't have to switch between like this every time, manually typing them in, is we can actually make a watch list. So to do that, we click this top button on the right-hand side, watch list and details. So what this is going to do is open up a watch list where you can actually then click this plus arrow and add in. For example, let's say we want to add Bitcoin. We can add Bitcoin to our list, right? And we can type them in. For example, let's say we want to add the euro versus the Swiss franc. We can just do that, and it will add the euro versus the Swiss franc to the bottom of our list. So that is how we are going to create a watch list. We'll be talking about refining a watch list soon, which is where we can then actually go ahead and create one of these for yourself. But that is how we do that. We have this watch list icon at the top, and that is really going to be where you work from. It's nice and easy to scroll through your watch list. This is my personal watch list. These two are indices. We will get to these later in the course. These three are the pound pair currencies that I trade: GBP USD, GBP AUD, GBP JPY. And then I've got Euro USD, nice major pair, and also gold as well. So these are all things that I personally trade, and pretty much the only things I personally trade, except for the odd one-off elsewhere. Now, crafting your watch list, very important, so make sure you do that. You can actually have multiple watch lists as well. You can add a new list. For example, let's just make a specific list for this. Now, if we want to look at the Forex pairs, we can, find, let's have a look at New Zealand dollar versus the US dollar. We can add that to our list. Now, if we click on that, it's going to be right there, ready to actually view. Okay. So there we go. That is your watch list setup. And yeah, there we go. So we've got watch list, time frames, color themes. That is pretty much everything we are going to need for your workstation, keeping everything nice and simple. Next thing to look at is going to be these tools. So let's actually talk through the tools that you need. Crosshair, first of all, is basically what we view price with. I use a crosshair, and the crosshair is going to be a line. You want to make that a line because it might be dotted when you first start. Now, actually change that crosshair to a line. Let's find out where that is. I've forgotten where that is now. Crosshair, there we go. So we can switch this. It's in the appearance section of the chart settings. We can switch this from dashed line, dotted line, or a flat line. Now, I think the flat line is the best because we can use it as a kind of dynamic support or resistance. We can scroll that onto the chart and see key levels, okay, on the price scale. So the line is the best for me. I use a blue one just so that it's a little bit different to what the actual general price scales are. So I like to use a blue crosshair that is lined, okay? So that is what you want to do with your crosshair, just to keep it nice and simple. The dots can look a bit messy, the dashes can too. So I always recommend just keeping to the cross and making it blue and lined. So there we go, that's crosshair. Now the other things are the tools. This is how we actually do our analysis. All we're going to be using from this list, we have a few. We will be using the trend line, just as a quick dash tool. Now I don't actually use trend lines in their usual sense in any of my trading, as you will see throughout the course, throughout this technical chapter, but we do like to use these as just a quick, resistance, support base. Trend line, very useful for that. Also useful for forecasting price, marking out where you want price to go, which I use a blue line for. From this section, we will also be using horizontal lines, which is going to be how we plot our key levels. Of course, something we will get into a little bit later in the course. And you also want to use horizontal rays, okay, which are horizontal lines that cut off wherever you draw them. So let's say we want a ray sticking to here, we can click that and it's going to give us a ray going across. So horizontal lines, horizontal rays, and the trend lines as these little small dynamic support resistance points is all we're going to be using from this trend line area, okay? I mean, you might want to use arrows as well. But actually I don't use those very much because I actually just do this if I'm doing an arrow. And then there we go. You can actually use the little toolbox that pops up to add an arrowhead to your trend line. So that's what we're using from there. From elsewhere, we want to completely ignore this one generally. There's one thing we will be using on this, which is Fibonacci retracements. We will get into that later though, after most of the technicals have been covered. So don't worry about that for now. We don't want none of that nonsense. This one here with the box, this one's very useful. This is how we plot zones. So out of this one, really all we will use is this rectangle tool, but we will be using that a lot. So get used to using these rectangle tools. That's where it is. I know another thing worth mentioning as well is I do actually have multiple zones, okay, multiple different types of boxes. Now what I mean by this is if we double click and we go to template at the bottom, or can we right click? Template. Yeah, we can right click it or double click it. Basically what you're going to get is this box that pops up. If you click template on this page, we have the different options. We can save the template, okay? So let's say, for example, we wanted to do a box with a red border and a green background for whatever reason. We could actually then go ahead and save this as whatever we want to call it. And then we will have that saved. And if we actually go to the drop down, then we can, for example, say we're on there, we can then click the extra, the one we just made, and it will switch the color scheme to suit what we just created. So we will want to be using those. I would recommend setting up a few different templates. Okay, there are a few different ones that I'm going to be using. I use 3 different types of zones. We have consolidation zones, liquidity zones, and supply and demand zones. So my consolidation zones are simply empty boxes, just used to mark support and resistance areas. We'll get into that a bit later. The liquidity zones is how we're going to be identifying liquidity. Now, this is also something we will talk about. I don't expect you to understand what liquidity is yet, but it is important to have a fresh zone just for the liquidity. And supply and demand, arguably the most important, the one we will be using the most, which is why I have my favorite color scheme on this one, which is the blue box with the black border. So that is the different rectangles we're going to be using, and these will be one of the most widely used tools that we actually use in our TradingView. So I believe that is all off this list that we will really use. We don't need to use any of these other ones. The T, this is text, of course, so we can write anything we want on the chart. Now this one's quite useful. We also have price labels. This one's useful for actually plotting key levels. Okay, so say we want to mark out the 0.670 level, we can simply just grab a price label, click that on there, and then we can see instantly when we look at the chart that this is a key level. So the price label is quite useful for annotating your analysis. We also have callouts, which is basically text inside of a box. So we can use those too. Mostly though, personally, I believe you're probably mostly going to just use the text one if you ever need to annotate your charts. Now that's the best for, just keeping it clean. Pretty much all we need to use from there. We've got arrows as well if you want to mark your trade entries or, favorable entries or whatever on the charts. You can do so using the arrow mark down or arrow mark up chart patterns, just like that. But there's not really too much need to actually use these unless you are sharing analysis. And that is it from there. This one, we are not going to use absolutely anything from that. Forget that. All really weird stuff. This is the risk reward tool. Now, we spoke about that risk versus reward. I showed a few examples where we can actually, let's say we want to sell this market down from here. So on our analysis to work out how big our stop loss is and how worthwhile the risk versus reward is, we can actually plot the stop loss size, which in this instance is the gray box, and we can plot our target. So let's say we're targeting the low of this level. We're entering here. Our stop loss is going to go here. The risk versus reward is then told to us. It's 3.69. So for every $1 we risk, we will be making $3.69 if this target comes through. We have a 126 pip gain, which is where it says 0.0126. Now, it's a little bit messy. I don't particularly know why it's like that, but that is a 126 pip target with where it says 0.00343. That is a 34.3 pip stop loss. So that's all we need to know from this one, really, is how far the stop loss is, how far the take profit is, and now the risk versus reward as well, which is where it says 3.69. So that's the risk versus reward tool. I do recommend, when you're doing trading, when you find a setup, annotate your setup like this. You can then find out how big your stop loss is, how big your take profit is, and you can mark it out on the chart and take a screenshot of that and add it into a folder somewhere to journal. So that's the risk versus reward tool. There's the long position and short position. Long position, obviously, as I spoke about in the Forex fundamentals, is for buys, and the short position is for sell trades. In this section, we don't really need anything else. We do have, this is quite an interesting tool, the forecast tool. Basically, we can plot on how far do we think price is going to go, what level does it start at, what level do we want it to get to, and within what time frame. But really, we don't need to know about that too much. The main focus is going to be the long and short position. Now, this price range one as well is going to tell us how far away price is. If we do actually label background, there we go. We actually have a label on here which says how many pips away the price is, okay? So in this example, dragged it down 147 pips from there. So this is actually good for gauging how far our targets are as well, so that we can work out how big stop losses need to be. And that is pretty much it from there then. So that's mostly everything that we need to look at, I think. Final thing, we can switch between candles, bars, line charts. With this one, candles is pretty much where we'll always want to be. We will be talking about that a little bit later, though, in this section of the course. And we can also actually add indicators. Now, the only indicators I actually recommend using are these three. We won't talk about them yet, but I will talk about them a bit later on in the course, in this chapter. So for now, I think that is it. We'll call it that, okay? One final thing, actually, this box here, select layout, we can actually get a double chart layout, right? Basically, if we wanted to look at a daily chart on this side for the overall bigger picture, and then we wanted to look at the hourly chart here for a scaled in view for actually finding out entries, we can do so on both tabs. And now if we actually do this, what we can do is plot the zone. And then if we copy Control C, Control V on the other side, it will copy that exact same zone plotted at the exact same levels over onto this chart. Now you can actually lock the drawing tools across both, so that when you draw on this one, it comes onto this one. But I don't like doing that because then you get a lot of messy things. It's better to copy and paste individually. And that is how you will do that. That is how you'll run multiple chart layouts on one page. So this is essentially why I think I'm going to get a 15-inch MacBook next, just so that I've got a bit more screen room for this. So I do recommend, if you are looking to get a MacBook, probably go with a larger one, the 15-inch one. The 13 is nice, versatile, easy to carry around, easy to take around, nice and portable. But if you want the extra screen room, the 15 is definitely going to be recommended. So for now, nothing wrong with this one that I've got. Having a great time using it. But I do believe maybe if you don't have one yet and you are looking to get one, probably go with the 15-inch, okay? I'm going to be getting one next for sure, because I think it's going to give me more clarity on the charts and more room to work with. So that's everything then. Of course, we do have different layouts. I wouldn't really recommend putting on more than 2 charts for a time. You don't really need to. It's going to get messy. And without further ado, that is everything then. So that is setting up your trading view, setting up your workstation. We spoke about suitable computers. Personally, I recommend laptops. Personally, I also recommend Apple laptops because Windows ones can be a bit clunky and a bit crap to use. Less resistant as well if you bash it. And we've spoken about actually setting up your personal chart layout with multiple color themes, with your highlighted timeframes, creating a watch list, and using all the different tools that we need to use. So for now, that is everything. We will talk about a few additional little bits later on, but that's it for now. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed, and I'll see you over in the next one.